Hi Tim, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. It was great attending the Sapphire Now event this week. I thought we should do a recap and talk about it, how it went, what did you like, and what do you think was kind of missing, or what can we improve in future? You're in technology space for a long time. I want to hear your views, and I will give my 2 cents as well.
Great.
So,
Looking forward to it.
so let's talk about going from the physical to virtual. What's your take?
This is the first thing that people see, and we're all having to deal with this. So no one is immune to get a hall pass on this. Everyone has to shift gears from moving from a physical event to a virtual event. And as we saw with Sapphire Now, SAP really had some challenges in
Yeah.
making that transition. The first day was really challenging. They had to switch gears to be able to stream the content through other platforms, and their core platform was failing. I mean, that's a really hard thing to recover from for an event, but they seem to be able to bring some of the core messages out and at least be able to deliver those. But it is different, right?
Yeah.
Virtual is different than physical. I mean, case in point, you and I are in two different cities talking rather than kind of across the table from one another or standing next to each other having this conversation.
Yeah, some of the comments I heard saw online, other than the hiccups, like people couldn't get to it, that they recovered by using other social media outlets to stream that content, was that it was more like scripted and more pre-recorded and less of the live. I think those are sort of pretty apt remarks. I think again, as you said, we are learning. I think going live, giving that sort of distribution of know-how or what you're trying to do, your marketing efforts, and putting that knowledge out there for practitioners and your customers and their business folks it's an art. It takes a while, so you have to be doing it for a while. So in the beginning you will make the mistakes. I think some other vendors are doing it pretty well. I think Cisco is doing for a longer, and their DevNet days was running in parallel to this event, and I think they're pretty good at that. And I think we have examples around us to learn from. But this was interesting experience, I think.
But you're absolutely right. Recorded sessions versus live sessions, you've got to have some live sessions in there.
Yeah,
And I would have liked to have seen more live and less recorded from SAP. Unfortunately, you could just tell a lot of it was very polished, very scripted. Once you did get access to the content, and it was hard to interact. You don't have that same interaction that you would have at a physical event. So all the more reason why you need to create these channels, these opportunities for folks to virtually interact with the presenters. And let's face it, none of this is perfect for any of us. We
yeah, it's not.
all understand that it's not going to be a perfect scenario like maybe what we might do in a physical event. So if there is a hiccup here or there, or you say something that you didn't quite mean and you got to go back and correct that, I think that's okay. But I think too many people are trying to head down this recorded path of just recording things and you're just watching a video.
Yeah,
Not
but
as interesting.
but to their credit, I think they kept the content to not very lengthy content. I think they did a good job there. Like it was not like the message from CEO or their leadership or the customer stories. They were not long, like where we get bored, like, because we have less attention span when you're sitting in front of the screen versus when we're at the event, we're kind of locked in to the venue and we're just watching that. So I think they did a good job there. On the other things, like overall, under overall, we can talk about what was new and the areas for improvement. So in the new areas, your observations.
Yeah, so I think overall, I don't think it was as interesting of an event as past Sapphires that I've been to. In past events, you've got not just the physical kind of pomp and circumstance, but you have a lot of really big announcements that typically are front and center as part of the CEO coming on stage or the executive team coming on stage. And we heard a few things at this Sapphire that I think were interesting. One is Industry Cloud. The SAP team taking a couple of industries and focusing on some core industries and then going deep into those spaces. I think that's an important piece, especially for those industries that are looking to really kind of change the way their business operates. Another thing we heard was their Climate 21 initiatives. And I think sustainability kind of came front and center. That was right on the heels of all of that empathy that was coming out in every single session, realizing that, hey, we're all dealing with the virus crisis. We're all dealing with racism. We're all dealing with these core social issues. And so I think it's important to understand that we are people, but we're here at Sapphire to learn about what SAP is doing. And so that's where I think there were two things that I'll point out. One is there was a lot of emphasis around process automation, which is kind of back to the brass tacks of SAP.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been an SAP customer, as I have in the past, you know it's all about process automation. How do you take your business processes, speed them up, create a greater degree of accuracy, greater visibility? The things that I didn't see as much were more around, I would have liked to have seen more around that customer experience. I mean, it's one of the three core pillars that I talk about is customer engagement. We saw that somewhat in the keynotes, like with Porsche, which was great. I didn't see as much around cloud, and I didn't see as much around edge, which I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I think they had some IoT, like very small mentions, right? Like very tiny mentions. I think the focus is still on the applications like SaaS, like SAP is a SaaS shop. We know that, right? But when it comes to the cloud, under that, they have HANA, right? And then they have the analytics, which is divided into data warehouse and analytics, like three things. They talk about three things all the time when it came to cloud. I think I would like to have like hear more about the partnership with the other cloud vendors. On that note, I think the partnership programs like SAP runs is kind of a little on the meek side or weak side, right? Um, I, I think that needs to be strengthened. There are a lot of ISVs build applications on top of by stretching the SAP core ERP and the new acquisitions that did, the success factors and Ariba and others, right? So they extend those solutions and they're creating applications on top of SAP, right? And I think SAP needs to have a app marketplace like other cloud providers. I know they are not into infrastructure as a service or platform as a service kind of business, but I think they're partly platform. That's my own thinking. I think they need to move into that direction, a little more toward PaaS from SaaS, and then create a cloud marketplace for ISVs. And I think the industry cloud is a baby step towards that. I wish they painted a picture for the next few years. Like, okay, this is what our intent is, right? So, and like we are working towards this, like a long term, like a vision or a roadmap, if you will. I think the roadmap was kind of missing. They try to cover that in the final remarks today, in the Q&A, because a lot of people asked in the questions, right? And but yeah, I think that's what they kind of lacked. But newness, as you said, like industry cloud, I think is a good initiative.
Yeah,
And other social causes, like they came across as more like humane kind of company, more like touchy feely, which needs to be there in any brand. I think the demeanor from all execs today in that meeting was great. Like you can relate to them. They look like nice people.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
But going back to something you were saying, like with industry cloud, um, if you are an SAP customer today, the announcements around industry cloud, is that enough to keep you an SAP customer?
yeah.
And if you're not an SAP customer today, are the announcements around industry cloud enough to make you an SAP customer? And I don't think there was enough meat there that was shared to really kind of answer either of those two scenarios, either of those two questions. And that's where, like you said, I would have liked to have seen more of that roadmap of how that kind of plays out, what that context is, how they're going to be able to bring the other pieces in. They did talk briefly about the app marketplace for industry cloud. But I think there were a lot of questions around, so what exactly is that? How exactly would that work? What if I am an on-prem SAP customer, as many SAP customers are today?
Yeah.
They're running that software on-prem. They're not running it in the cloud. So how do they start to make those kind of connective tissue connection points? I think there are a lot more questions that came up as part of that they have to be able to answer in short order. But it's interesting. I just question, is it interesting enough?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So whenever I heard cloud word coming off anybody's mouth, I'm very blunt here. It was like with some hesitation kind of thing, like yeah, cloud, right? So another piece, actually, I'm a very developer focused. I'm always biased toward developers. I think developers set the tone of any um, transformation when it comes to doing stuff actually in these enterprises, and we need to equip developers to write these applications at the LOB level, right? So I think I didn't hear much about developers. In the last comments today, actually, there was some talk about API and AI and RPA a little bit. That how SAP uses their own sort of their own dog food like inside, right? So they're using APIs and trying to use AI and RPA, but I didn't hear that during the other like 3.5 or almost 4 days. I think going forward they should focus a little more on developers, because we end up extending a lot of these ERP systems or systems of record. That's where they play the most. Like that's what the strength is, and they are in the system of engagement in procurement and SCM and HCM. So, but I think they need to equip the developers a little more. I remember back in 2099 to 2000, I was at Commerce One, right? We had partnership with SAP, and we used Actional Software, which was just a merging company at that time, to create the web services on top of SAP. Like they will take the app
Mm-hmm.
calls and all that stuff on the back end and create the web service for us to consume. And then we'll ingest that into our platform and then show the results in Commerce One applications. And I think that still is going on. The same stuff is still going on. And there's a lot less native actional like functionality being built at SAP. I think the platform needs to be a little more open to get in and to take the data out. Like you can send data into it and then take data out. I think it's a little more, still a little close than I would like to see.
Well, but to your point about developers, I think there's a balance here too. I mean, most of the folks that are engaging with SAP, at least initially, are either going to be someone that's a business leader or an IT leader, not a developer. This is not a product that starts with the developer and then moves out. It goes the other way around. And historically, that's been the case. I think the other piece to this is a core differentiator that I found with SAP customers that are running on-prem versus in the cloud is when you're running on-prem, the classic way of adopting SAP was you said, look, here's our suite of business processes, whether you're talking about finance or manufacturing or whatever aspects, whatever modules of SAP you might be using. Now, modify the software to be able to match those business processes. That was the classic way of doing things. And the problem with that, and frankly, a lot of enterprises still are in that mode today. A lot,
Yeah,
if
they are.
not the vast majority of them. But here's the problem with that. Every time you do an upgrade, it's it's like an act of Congress. It takes a lot of money, it's a lot of pain, there's a lot of risk involved in it, it takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And so it's almost like you're upgrading to a whole new product because the amount of work that you go through to be able to do those upgrades is extreme. The
Yep.
folks that have started to use SAP Cloud have taken a completely different 180-degree view of this. And what they're doing is actually saying, look, we're getting off that merry-go-round, that upgrade merry-go-round. We don't want to customize the heck out of the product and then pay for it, again and again and again each time we need to upgrade down the road. Instead, what they're doing is saying, look, what can we take off the shelf with SAP Cloud, use it as is, and do some slight modifications. That way, we can take advantage of new features and functionality relatively immediately versus multiple years in coming. Because in the on-prem world with that customization, let's say AI comes out. Great, AI comes out today. It might not be 12 months to 24 months before I upgrade my version of ERP or whatever HCM or whatever aspect of the product I'm using. So now I'm 2 years in. Well, then I have to go through the project to actually do the upgrade. So I might be another year or two in. And then I have to go through testing and determine how I can use that new technology within my business processes. So I'm now I'm another year or so in. You're 5 years out. So the time between when a new technology becomes available for an on-prem installation to the time that it's actually usable in the business, 5 years, that's an eternity, an absolute eternity. But if you were using the cloud version of the product where you weren't customizing the heck out of it, think of the Salesforce model, right? Take it off the shelf. I might do some tweaking to the look and some of the reporting and whatnot, but the underlying software is exactly the same. Great, I can adopt those new technologies, those new features relatively immediately without having to go through all the pain and the time delay of going through these iterative approaches. It's a huge game changer, but I need to underscore, it requires you to change your thinking within the business, and that is hard for companies to do.
Like this is always like flexibility versus operability. Like when you want flexibility, you get locked, and you cannot easily upgrade, and like you have to move your customizations to the next version, and that takes money too to put it to the next version, right? So that's where the on-prem software sort of pain points come into play. I think cloud is still extendable. That's what they talked about, like API opening up. And then another thing is in that sort of same sphere or same sort of context is that normally systems of record traditionally have kept the data hostage, like this, it's my data, you can't get to it. So I think data needs to be freed or democratized, we usually call it, right? The fancy term.
Sure.
Because that data needs to be married with other applications, other platforms which companies are using. Companies are not using SAP only, so they're using a lot of other,
That's right,
software stacks and stuff like that, and homegrown applications. So they want to marry the data and mine that. And I think that their new efforts on the data warehousing and the analytics is that effort. Like, if we want to make the data go a little more free, so they can access it through like normal means, through open source kind of packages and stuff like that, not very highly proprietariness of SAP. And they're making some, like they said, they're 1,500 actually integrations are free, they said, right, today's talk. And they're making all SAP to SAP integrations free. They didn't used to be. So they're trying to open it up. I think that's the right direction. Yeah, we would love to hear from other folks, actually. Let's discuss it online on Twitter, and you can comment on if we're going to put this on YouTube because this will not fit any other format, I guess. We will try to chop it and put in tweets, tweetable chunks and on LinkedIn. And thanks to Rachel, she approached me to be part of this. It was great fun, and thanks, Tim. I always appreciate it. I'm learning from you a lot. So yeah, you're my role model. Thanks.
Thanks, SJ. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.